Hello everyone, my name is Philip. You may know me as DrRiptide, or CyanMentality depending on how you found me. CyanMentality is my music alias, and DrRiptide is my art alias. Ooh, they're both the same person. Ooh, art alias is amazing. Ooh, 21st century internet, etc. Yeah, the internet's full of amazing things. And one of these amazing things is a Ruby, some Ruby, I don't even know how to segue into this properly. I made some Ruby wallpaper a few days ago, in fact, and I've recorded myself making it, and I'm going to be talking over the top of it and giving you guys some insight into how I do what I do. I hope you enjoy. Alright, so straight into it. I'm starting off with a draft to get a basic idea and shape and feel for the characters. Quite often I refer to other pieces that I've done earlier in a sketch. So for example, I really liked the eyes that I was getting with Ruby, and so I just copy paste those and use them for Weiss's eyes. Weiss's eyes! Weiss's eyes! Also, every now and then, like, when I'm drawing, I like to scribble on people's faces because I think that it's funny. It gives me my jollies, and so every now and then, if you see me just completely obliterate someone's face in dignity, that's just me venting. And again. I tend to start drafting a thing, and then while everything else is still in a draft, I just finish one aspect of the picture. That's just how I work. That's just, like when you have to finish a big picture and it's like, I'm bored on this now, I'm just gonna work on this thing, which is great if you know that the picture has to be done by a certain time, and so then you just keep working on it and working on different aspects and treating it as a full project. It's not very good if your client, you're bouncing information and ideas off a client, because then it becomes, you don't want to make any sort of final moves until they've had a say on it, and then they ask you to change things, and then it's like, oh, but it clearly looks fine this way. Like, I see it in my mind, it working perfectly like this, just let me show you. And they're like, no, needs to do this, which is fine because it's their picture. But yeah, just so for personal art pieces, you'll see me sort of toot around. Also I expand the canvas size a lot because something starts off small and then you realize it's got to be bigger. That's cool, you just sort of work on that. Drawing Ruby is really, really hard. Ruby has an incredibly particular way as to how she looks, and I find that rushing drafts gets, like, it's not very good. Especially since so drawing Yang here, I really like how she looks. I think it's like the angle of her face, something about the eyes. I'm not huge on Ruby. I can watch it if it's on, but it's not my most favorite thing in the world. This was just for fun though, because the characters are really cool. But as a result, I had to keep checking in with my friends who are more fanatical watchers and be like, okay, so is this sort of indicative of this character's personality? Because I don't want to mess it up. Currently I'm doing the eyes. I'm going to slow down a bit more a bit later and show you how I do them a bit formally. But essentially I do, it's kind of different every time how I do aspects of the art piece. So in this case, today's eyes were made by having an outline and so having a dark outline and having a dark pupil, and then having a gradient color underneath, and then with a 30% overlay layer, just pounding in like a bit more depth and some more interesting You can't just leave it as the gradient, but I find that putting in the overlay sort of helps bump the vibrancy a bit. And then just like straight white on top for the light in the eyes. I use a lot of layers. Also, you'll notice that instead of getting the colors right straight off, I tend to draw black, either like draw black or white, and then layer style. So basically, a layer style in Photoshop is when you tell Photoshop to make all the pixels on this layer a certain color or a certain gradient, and then it does so. And I've like a lot of people may find that really encumbersome to have to keep opening up the layer style every single time you do a thing. Also, layer styles don't translate hugely well into like After Effects or anything. But I find it really useful. You just copy paste a layer style if you want to bring skin shading across, or the color of something across. You just copy paste it instead of having to eyedrop and repaint a thing. So yeah, that's just the way I do it. There is no wrong way to art. There's no wrong way to do something in Photoshop. You just do what you got to do until it looks good. Yeah, this is more a cathartic sort of thing, where it's like you're trying to draw something and make it look good, and then it's just fun to be like, you're mine now. Just like scribble on it. Okay, I think this is the next day. So I'm really liking how Yang's looking, so I'm essentially going to take her through and I think finish her, more or less. So I'm polishing up the lines, still referencing some bits and pieces. I may have actually clung to the reference a bit much for some of these. You'll see a bit later how I'll have like Photoshop on half the screen and then the video on the other half, so that I can just refer to them like that, like this. The important thing with using references is to know when to stop. The important thing is to, like, by all means, know how something looks by using references. But if you feel like it's getting to the point where you'd make something look stylized or cute or cool or whatever, you do something in a way that you like, but you feel like it's deviating from the reference, then turn the reference off. There's a threshold where the reference is there to help you, but it's not there to be your art for you. So when you have your own art style established, it makes using references a bit more trickier, because sure, you can see what the art style is meant to be, but then translating that into your own art style can be quite difficult. Yeah, so for example, I have an exaggerated, adorable art style with more rounded eyes. I'm not really doing it like that isn't really the style for this artwork, but sort of the muscle memory on how I treat eyes in a different style doesn't really gel with the way that I have Yang how I want her, and so I spend ages goofing around with Ruby's eyes. Really, I just need to sort of cut off the roundedness and make it a bit more like rounded square. Moving on to Weiss though, because change is as good as a rest. That's right, I was working on Weiss, and then I got a picture of Ruby, and I was like, alright, I'll give it another shot. So by letting the cheeks have more of an impression on how the eyes look, that really hammers home, like, it makes the entire face happy as opposed to just a face with smiles and eyes. Something that I should have been keeping in mind at this point was how the facial, like just how much the facial expressions distort and exaggerate the shape of the face. So for quite some time I try and make all these pieces work together on the same sort of skull shape. You'll notice that in some Western cartoons, when a character is grinning or laughing and they're side on, there's like a gap in their head where their mouth is like open because they're laughing. Whereas anime doesn't tend to have that as much. It's more treated as though the head is its own entity, and the sort of mouth and the expressions and stuff all take place on the face. And yeah, me sort of having a combination of the two, I should have really been more willing to distort the head a bit. You're drawing a mouth that's grinning so much that it's changing the shape of the face, and there are going to be consequences to that. Like there's, it's going to now encroach on the spaces that you have for the eyes. The nose is going to be moved up, the chin's going to be, like the shape of the face is now complementing the smile, and I just didn't have that in mind when I was working on it, and I should have. When you're drawing the personality of a character, basically you just draw the facial expression that they most commonly use and just do that the best you can. Like you bundle up everything that the character is in that one facial expression. So before, when I was redrawing the whites of Yang's eyes, basically, okay, so it's generally a good practice when you're working on something and you flip it horizontally to sort of look at the same thing but from the opposite angle. It shows off a butt ton of like mistakes, and it completely jades you and makes you hate artwork, and then you never want to do art again. But I flipped Yang around and decided she looked better flipped around, and so I rolled with that. So it was just like updating everything else. Eyebrows. Don't forget to do eyebrows. For the longest time, a lot of my artwork had no eyebrows, and so all of the expression was done with the shape of the eyes. Yeah, that's eyebrows. Eyebrows can help you. Still not convinced on the eyes, but getting the shape of the face is really important. Yeah, I think the shape of the face is really important for that initial, glancing and recognizing the character. Because like hair changes around and clothing changes depending on the scene or the episode or whatever. But like the shape of the face, it's subtle. Like you wouldn't think that it was that big a deal. Especially since in my style, all of it's like rounded, like sort of rounded chins or slightly sharper for whatever. Yeah, that's something that I pay special attention to. A little playful tuft of hair there. I really struggle to draw people's bodies. I've had a lot more practice with characterizing people's faces. So all of these 4 kind of cut off at like shoulder height. Yeah, it's kind of a pseudo portrait in that manner. I mean, it is a portrait, but it's sort of like hinting at the body as sort of, it implies that you could go more even when you really can't. It's just like, well, I mean, I drew her shoulders. It's like, okay, cool, draw those shoulders as good as you can. And then just don't tell anyone that you don't know what you're doing. I've been told that before you can... So I don't know if you guys have been given this advice before, but a lot of people in the past said that before you can draw stylized cartoony bodies, you need to first be able to draw realistic bodies. I think so for ages I was like, what? Screw that noise. I just draw my own thing. You know, I'll stylize the bodies if I want to. I don't even pay my taxes. I'll do it the flip I want. But what that's referring to is the importance of understanding your subject matter before I guess you have the right to munt it. So like, by all means, draw whatever you want, but if you're having trouble with bodies, learning, or at least watching tutorials on how to draw, like not necessarily photorealistic, but just how to draw an actual proper body, because then you know how to munt it up with it still looking good. So I drew Weiss's ponytail thing just coming out straight back of her hair, even though it's on the side. But I mean, on this angle, if it was on the side, then it would look like a weird lump in her hair. And so my thinking was like, okay, well, creative license. I'm gonna show that she has a ponytail because her having a ponytail is more important than where exactly it's positioned in this regard. So now I'm updating Yang's hair. My gosh. now I'm ruining Blake's eyes. Like, you'd think that I'd get the eyes right in the concept phase, but and like clients have this all the time where they'd see something in the concept phase, but then like as it becomes more finished, they're like, oh, this isn't how cool the concept's implied in my head. Artists get that too. Well, at least I get that. And so it's like, yeah, so you know, here are some scribbly lines that implies how the face works and the eyes and whatever, and then you make it for real, and it's like, actually these colors won't work, and this, you know, this outline is too thick and it throws this off proportion. So yeah, it's sort of maybe more skillful artists would have it all planned from the get-go, but you know, whatever. I'm a talentless hack. What can I tell you? I just draw pictures. I don't have a real job. I don't know what I'm doing. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I wish I had some sort of profound moral as to why I'm still fixing stuff up at this point in the program. But you know, I mean, you work on it, and then as it becomes more finished, you realize how more unfinished it is. Oh, I could have worded that and sounded really, really sagely. Like, the more you know how wrong it is, the more you are right. Oh gosh. The more you are right. Fool me Weiss. No! Oh! Fool me once, shame on me! Fool me Weiss! I drew her eyes! Oh gosh, never mind. Moving on. Yeah, so I haven't quite realized, but Weiss's face is a little off. The chin, I think the face needs to... See, like, here's the weird thing with my style, is that, like, it's all good to sort of reference a thing to know how something should look, but then when you're putting it into a completely different context, you have to understand what you're drawing. What you're referencing isn't appropriate for the context that you're putting it into. You have to Frankenstein what you're working on into that context. You're creating something from nothing. Like, of course it's difficult. It's really, really hard. Art is really hard. I know I said that earlier, but for realsies. Like, jeepers. Yeah. Ah, I'm really liking Yang. Flippin', why do anime names, why are they all the same? Anime names, why are they all the same? Why can't they just Mecha Yang? See, that's a title I'd respect. If it's just like, Sokka, what are you doing? I've constructed Mecha Yang. And then it's like, fires like grappling hooks and stuff. Anyway, yeah, so now I'm kind of adding like the sparkly shiny bits on top. I use soft light and hard light layers to make things look like, so for example, the eyes and the blonde hair, a bit on the scarf as well, just to sort of pop the colors a little more. So Blake's hair. So a lot of Blake is absolutely black. And so differentiating her hair and her bow and her scarf and her belt suspender thingies, like, that's really hard. So what I do is I always use a sort of a shade of blue when I'm doing her black forms. And then, like, the bow is slightly lighter than the hair, so I make it slightly more grey. The scarf is slightly darker, etc. So you sort of you kind of exaggerate the differences between the different shades of the colour to make it all sort of work together as a unit a bit better. I find when you eyedrop colours, you become more close-minded to the idea of choosing colours for yourself. You become, like, you essentially pick the right colours straight off, right? So now your initial gate towards manipulating those colours and changing them up for your picture have been stunted by the fact that you've already picked the right colours, right? this sort of ties back into using your references wisely. It's like, don't let a reference hinder your creativity. And now I finally got Ruby's face to a state where it's okay. So it looks kind of derpy right now, but like the shape, I finally got the shape of the eyes right. It took me ages, and yeah, remember this is like 7 hours compressed down into 40 minutes. So yeah, it's quite a long time to be spending scribbling a person's face over and over. She's so derpy. She's like, ah! So at this point, I'm finishing up. I'm polishing bits and pieces. These could be pretty much done, but again, since it's me working on it, I'm just like, I'll just do a bit more. It's almost perfect. Like, you know, it's almost good enough. That's a byproduct of being your own. Like, when you do your own personal artwork, you're the one that's in charge of it, and it's like, but I mean, I could perfect it. I could just keep going until you get absolutely sick of it, and you're just like, oh, it's done, it's finished, I hate it. So I was gonna have like the sort of interesting sort of painted endings to like the sort of edges of the bust, where it's just like, yeah, now it's like they're scribbled onto the page and it's cute. And then I thought, actually, if it's self-contained, it'll work a bit more as a wallpaper. It's a little weird. It was just a personal decision that I thought was good. Oh yeah, also I totally haven't finished Weiss's body yet. So I'll get on that. Oh, and I just realized that she's got like a little spiky crown bit thing. So I'm just like, oh damn, better pop that in there. Some nice cattle prongs for your face. Yeah. Prong it up. So yeah, by this point it must all seem pretty familiar. Outlines, coloring the outlines, putting in a base, coloring the base, putting in shading, coloring the shading, or a derivative of that. And these are my whirlwind, amazing, deformed bodies. I much prefer drawing landscapes because no one tells you that a landscape is drawn wrong. I mean, people can, but those people just need to calm the flip down. Like, you can draw anything you want in a landscape because it's all you, right? Like, it's all being created off the top of your head, but everyone knows what a person looks like, even a stylized person. And so, you know, like, it comes into understanding the human form, and then you know how to goof it up without it looking terrible. And so, like, you know, comic book artists and stuff are masters of this, because the sort of the poses that you get in comic books are like, you know, like, shouldn't your spine be like cracked in like 3 places now, and, you know, isn't your butt like massive? You know, like the way that they stylize is with incredible discipline, because they understand the human form, so they understand how to like deform it and force it into positions where it clearly shouldn't be, but it looks alright, like it looks fine. So yeah, anyway, I'm not good at that. I'm far more comfortable in landscapes because less people whine about landscapes. I get quite a few questions about, and she's got that weird doily thing in the front of her dress thing. Like, I get a lot of questions about how I do shading, how I understand where shading should be. Honestly, I just think if I were light, where would I not be? Which sounds kind of goofy, but it's like, you know, whatever. It makes sense to me, so that's how I solve the problem. Granted, you can have, like, if this light were accurate, then it's like, okay, cool. So the collar has some shading, and the arms and the shoulders and stuff have some shading. But you can kind of have a bit of liberty with that with fabric, because it's like it's implied creases in the fabric. It works. It's cool. And no one will sort of call you out on that. But yeah, I mean, I guess it's just practice that gets it to the point where if it looks right, then it's fine, and then if it's not, you notice it later, or you flip it around and you realize that it's atrocious. You know, it's practice is kind of a four-letter word. A lot of people like to have a quick fix for why they're so terrible at artwork, myself included. But yeah, I mean, you do it because you love it, and the more you do it, the more it's a pursued interest. Like, there's no cheat mode or, you know, performance enhancing, arguably no performance enhancing paraphernalia that you can use to get better at art. It's just, you do it because you love it, and you get better because you do it. Alright, so I think I'm kind of in the final stretch here. I'm just polishing up bits and pieces, having a final look over, adding bloom, adding bright bits, adding dark bits, adding bright bits, adding dark bits. Goodness. Oh yeah, and then I realized that they're all missing eyelashes. Because as we all know, the cartoon stereotyping is that female characters have got eyelashes in some form or another. I remembered with Yang and then with no one else, and it's like, why are they all tomboys? Alright, yeah, that's what I do. It's pretty repetitive, because once you start drawing a thing, you just keep drawing a thing until it's finished, and then it's finished. And then you record it and talk over it for 40 minutes, and hopefully it makes the world a better place. So thank you very, very much for watching. I hope that you've learned a thing. If you have any questions, feel free to buzz me on my DeviantArt page or YouTube. I got the download for the wallpaper in the description. And yeah, have an amazing day. Be good, stay safe, God bless, make the world a better place. Go!